All right. Today on Lions Guide Podcast, we got Mr. Michael Russell, who has been a longtime friend of mine. And, it's not often you get to say you get to bring a guy on that beats you up routinely, a couple of days a week sometimes. But Mike has been my jujitsu instructor, pretty much, jujitsu coach even for years now. So, Mike, welcome to the show. Introduce yourself.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. And look, those beatings are reciprocated. Don't think that that's always a one-way street, for sure. But no, I appreciate you having me on, and thanks for it. Known you for a long, long time, not only personally but professionally. Our businesses have done a good bit of business together over the years, so it's been a great personal relationship and professional relationship to know you. And I can't remember. I'm assuming I think the personal relationship started first before the business relationship. I think, if memory serves. Do you remember how it
Man,
started? Was
well,
it
no, I
was it
think
jujitsu originally?
I think what happened was like we were training at Phil's together, but kind of like not really rolling together so much because you would like assist instruct and you would kind of float around a little bit, and I was
Yeah.
just a white belt at the time, probably, or just a new blue, and but then I would see you at the gym, and then I think one day I was like, hey, you know, you want to roll? I got some mats together or something like that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
then I
yeah.
think, or maybe I don't freaking know, man. I barely remember what I had for breakfast, let alone what
I
happened
know,
5 years
I know.
ago.
That was a long time ago.
Yeah. But even
That was a
before
long
that,
time
right.
ago.
When Commitment Fitness in Centerville, one day I come in there and you had it was like rap tap or tap or nap or some shirt
Yeah,
on, and I'm like,
yeah.
what does this
Oh
do?
man,
And you were like rolling
who was it?
around on
Yeah.
the big ball. You were like practicing your escapes or something. I'm like, who is this guy? And then I think not much longer was the first time I saw you at Phil's, and I don't know.
That's so
Somehow
funny.
we roll around in our PJs together 2 days a week and beat each
Yeah,
other
yeah,
up.
yeah. I still have that sweatshirt, which is funny. I was teaching at the Naval Academy at the time. They created a jujitsu club because, of course, they've got a massive judo following at the Naval Academy. So we had gone there and started teaching some jujitsu, and I did that for like 2 years. So I think I probably, my wife, it kills me because I never throw anything away, but I still have that sweatshirt.
So
Yeah.
but yeah, the
Now, but
wives became fast friends. We both have three
yeah,
kids, so
yeah,
it's just we're both 1980 babies who have appreciation for
we
He-Man and all
are.
the good things that came out of being an '80s kid.
That's right. That's right. That's right. The
So
80s
uh,
fan.
so we'll get into the jujitsu, but give us some of your background. Where you come from, what do you
Sure.
do, what's your story?
Sure. So, my day job is I'm the chief strategy officer for a defense business called Federal Resources Supply. And I've been doing this gig now, gosh, probably about 12 years. And I tell people it's been one of the most challenging positions I've ever had, but one of the most rewarding. And primarily for the clientele that we support. We do a ton with first responders and primarily military and DoD, and we're much on the defense side, so really protecting those from emerging threats and things that can harm them. Um, and really the way that I got into it was kind of crazy happenstance. Sometimes people say it's not what you know, it's who you know. And I had been doing living in kind of the wholesale distribution world for a long time, large commodities of steel and things like that for HVAC, and kind of had grown through the ranks and become kind of a higher level salesperson in that organization. And I had a friend reach out and they wanted me to come work in the NCR for them. And I'm sure we'll get into it, but kind of a family of faith from us, and I kind of prayed through it and didn't really seem like it was the right thing at the right time, and they came back, probably I think a month later and offered me another position, and for some reason it just at that time prayed through it again, and it seemed right, and it was kind of off to the races, and I started in the maritime side of their business, which at the time was roughly probably a $3 to $6 million division of the business. And, through kind of God's grace and a little bit of know how, I was able to probably within about a year's time double that revenue. And it was really no other secret sauce and really kind of understanding and figuring out the system. And, a lot of the government is like that. It's a very formulaic type of business because a lot of the contractual stuff that goes on in it. And, I came from a place in that distribution world, and I'm starting to look older now, but back then I looked pretty young.
Hmm.
And, that kind of business was a very old boy business where, it was kind of who you played golf with on the weekend. And you could have best efforts and outwork the guy next to you. But really, it would kind of fall on deaf ears. And the government space gave me a little bit of a more even playing field, if you will, because a lot of it has to based on your past performance, contracts that you've operated and executed on, and how the government's rated you on that. And really, that's a lot of key success on how you win business going forward. So, from as a young guy coming into this business, call it 12 to 15 years ago, whenever I started at Federal, it was nice because I had that hunger and I had that drive to kind of learn and to grow. But it kind of put me on a little bit more of an even playing field where I, didn't have some of those, hey, who kind of working against you. Um, and really rose through the ranks of the business fairly quickly. And a lot of what I had focused on back then was kind of large contract capture. And now, kind of in my role today, what I typically do is, as the business grows, and really just to give you some understanding of kind of what that looks like, if I started in the business probably roughly 12 to 13 years ago, we were probably doing about $40 million top line revenue, which is healthy. That's a healthy small business. Um, and we've grown it, I think, this last year through COVID, even 2020, we were very blessed. We did, I think, 850 million. So
Wow.
really that kind of sharp hockey stick revenue growth, which, it is, that's never one person. That's a team of people and the whole business, infrastructure. And look, we've created a very entrepreneurial, forward-looking sales force, and the rest of kind of the business and the operation side and infrastructure has really had to grow alongside and kind of keep up with that revenue, which is a lot of times the challenge that we face is really keeping that customer satisfaction high, delivering a good product while we are building this infrastructure behind this sales force that has continued to kind of grow revenue year over year. And that's really been the challenge. So my role today is kind of transitioned kind of more of doing back in the day to more of the strategic outlooking of, what are the barriers of entry for new markets as we move into new space? And, as you look at the DoD budget, where do we place our bets and our chips for growth? And, as we look at large contracts, I'm typically, the one that's given a lot of the thumbs up or thumbs down, whether we go after it, whether, it's going to be a high P win and we can win it, or, look, this one might be one that we're going to have to partner. So, that's a lot of what I do from a day-to-day perspective, and really support the vice presidents that run those individual sales verticals, and just the day-to-day things that they face, because a lot of times it's things that, this from growing a business, Dale, you get those bumps and bruises growing that business. And a lot of times those VPs, they might be coming from another company and they're transitioning into that VP role or whatever it may be. And they haven't had all those bumps and bruises. So you're trying to impart that wisdom that you've kind of gotten, through those times upon them and help them solve problems and learn for themselves. So, that's kind of what I do today as my day job. Along with what everybody in the C-suite does, as which is run around with that fire hose and
Yeah.
put the daily fires out.
So,
So,
you guys grew the company. So this $750 million growth was over what period and how many years?
oof, that was I want to say it was probably 2008 to 10 timeline. We were doing 40 million, and then 2020 we hit 850, and we're projected to do probably over a billion this year in
Wow.
2021.
So 10 years,
So
a growth hockey stick of
yeah, and
$750
I
million.
mean, yeah, you really had like 40 to 80, 80 to 140, 140 to 240, 240 to like 350 to the 400s, 500s, and the
Yeah.
800s. So, I mean, it really, for those first few years, it was doubling of revenue, which, in that smaller infrastructure, you can kind of, everybody talks about scale of an organization and how to keep scale and utilize scale. really with that kind of revenue, nobody's ever really expecting to double, your
Yeah.
annual revenue. So you almost force scale to exist.
Oh yeah.
But that creates some gaps in capability. I mean, you quickly, everybody is really excited in the business when it grows at that rapid pace. So everybody's willing to kind of pitch in, and they're excited about the growth. But you can burn people out like that.
Sure.
You have roles that probably should be filled. You've got people starting to put 2 to 3 extra hats on. um, and really as a business leader, that's one of those things. I think a book that you might have recommended to me a while back, about really not only just looking at your org chart as just an org chart, but the responsibilities that come with those positions.
Yeah.
So, you can really see when you look at something like that where people start to get overwhelmed, like, man, that person's got 5 goals. This person over here has got 8 goals, and they're all equally important. But those 3, we should probably get over to somebody else and start looking at filling a role somewhere else in the business, kind of alleviate that pressure, because people get burnt out. It's
Yeah.
almost like running at a full sprint, and never relent.
Yeah, that was always a powerful tool that we employed, definitely in the high growth years of Corsica, which were the book is Traction for those who are
Mhm.
interested, and the tool in there it's called the accountability chart. So it's a org chart but on steroids, and the book takes you through the process, but to summarize it, it's basically the org chart, but you have an organization of the roles in the organization, and then you assign who is filling those roles. And you may have the same person in multiple roles, and that's where you get to see, like, man, Charlie over there, he's running sales, he's running marketing, and he's doing sales calls, and he's helping with the phones on the weekends, or whatever.
Yeah,
You it gives you this view, and as a leader, you get to see, like, these, you get that in front of you, and you go, okay, wow. And I guess the accountability part is you get to define and bring clarity to what these roles are accountable for, right? So it's a organizational
yeah,
chart
yeah,
that
yeah,
identifies a
yeah,
role, who fills that role, right? So a lot of org charts you see is, person, title, person,
yeah,
and then the
yeah,
chain of
yeah,
command.
yeah,
But the accountability chart is really the chain of command in its roles, the roles of the organization, then who's filling the role, and then what are the 5 to 7 things that role is accountable for. What's the
yeah.
5 to 7 key things? And now you have a much clearer picture on just how the organization is set up, and from a perspective of accountability. So it's a really powerful tool to like get rid of the gray, right? Like, because a lot of
Oh yeah,
organizations,
oh, yeah.
they got this going on there, they got finger pointing, like, oh, that's not my job, it's my
Mhm.
job. Well, the accountability chart, instead of thumbing through everyone's job descriptions, which are 8 pages long these days, you've got the accountability
Right.
chart that calls out those 5 to 7 key things, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So, but yeah, it's a lot of
yeah.
powerful
No,
tools in Traction.
yeah, and I think the good thing about that, and the accountability piece of it, I think, as you're growing the business, you have these predefined roles in your mind that the business needs in order to operate, COO, VP of Ops, whatever it may be. And at times we throw those titles around without really understanding the competencies that come along with those positions. And I think the accountability piece, that accountability, the levels of accountability and what you're required to do changes as the business grows. But I think when you can get a clear picture of that, it allows you to understand the competencies that people need in order to facilitate those positions. And that's something that has really become, I think, into focus for me over the last probably 2 to 3 months. Our current CEO, Larry Gwaltney, who's just a phenomenal guy, suggested a book to me, I don't know, probably a month or two ago, called The Speed of Trust, I think by Stephen Covey. And he's got some great little jewels in there, just about how trust, drives speed and decreases cost and some things of that nature. But one of the biggest takeaways that I had was, the difference between character and competence. And, I've been giving people kind of this kind of definition of it lately is like, hey, my wife, I emphatically trust with my life. She's my partner. I love her to death. There's nothing that I would not trust her with. I would not allow her to operate on me though, because she's not competent as a surgeon,
What do
right?
you
It
mean?
doesn't mean that I trust her any less, but her competency in the surgical field is not
No,
up to par.
absolutely.
So, that said, I've started to look at the people in the organization a bit different, from the factor that everybody wants to grow. They all want to know kind of what their path is. And I think, you've got to start with the character of the person, because I think character is a lot harder to build because it's built through behaviors. It's kind of who you are as a person, your integrity, what you do when nobody's around. And, those things are built through years and years and time behavior. Competencies, on the other hand, can be learned. They can be built, they are skills that can be added. And I think when you look at kind of that org chart and that accountability, and people say, hey, I want to be that VP, I want to be that director, that accountability allows you to really see the competencies that are required. And you can look at their current role and say, well, hey, look, in order for you to do this, here's really those 3 or 4 main competencies that we think you would need to grow to be able to fit that position, because we love your character. You're a trustworthy person in the organization, and we see how you treat others, and we see how you take care of yourself and those around you. So we trust you, we love you. But in order to be that person and to obtain that role, here are the competencies. And I think when you break it down to people like that, they're like, oh, I get it. And they feel trusted, they feel valued in the organization, but now they have goals to shoot to. And what you end up is you have an employee that is willing to work and grow. And whether they, grow those competencies and stay in your organization or not, they're bettering some other organization. And that holistically is just a good thing.
Yeah.
So
So with a rapid growth like that, 10 years, I mean, that's tremendous growth. Like, so that takes a lot of performance and execution. What do you think
mhm.
in your case? I use the word survive in that, right? Because I haven't been there. I know it's a tough, tough pill to just
Yeah.
come do that grind. I mean, because you called out the burnout, right? And
Oh yeah.
so it
Yeah.
takes a lot to get that done. What are some habits you think contributed most to, and contribute most to your success and sustaining that level of performance?
Well, I think being empathetic. I think oftentimes leaders sometimes forget kind of that daily struggle in that grind. And when you're asking people to really produce at the highest level, you can't look at it myopically and say, that they don't have a life at home, right? And that, they might not be having trouble with their marriage, or they got a kid that's acting up. Like, you have to understand, that we're all people outside of the job. And while you're, requesting of them to really operate and perform at a super high level to obtain growth like that, you need to be empathetic to the place that you are, and you've got to be really tuned in to the people around you. And I think from a leader's perspective, it's twofold. It's those that are in your close inner circle, and then even that next rung down. And you've got to be careful not to kind of usurp or jump the chain of command from a management perspective, but even kind of taking that temperature. Because I always kind of give the analogy, like, you're right. It's like driving. Sorry about that. It's like driving a race car. At 150, 200 miles an hour, you get a couple loose bolts, you're going to go off the track really quick because
Oh
you're
yeah.
going so fast. Um, so I think it's really being able to access the organization, your closest circle of whether it's your C-suite, your VPs, your director level, and then even to see kind of the folks below them and taking the temperature of the business. And some of that is just being amongst the people and getting to know them, knowing them on a personal level. I mean, for me, wrong, right, or indifferent, I pray for a lot of folks in our company. I know what's going on in their personal lives with some of their families, I diligently pray for them, and that's part of the way that my faith kind of permeates kind of who I am as a person and a professional. But it lets them know that you care, and you can't just look at everybody as a ones and zeros. And I think in our ability to grow organizations, I'm not saying that you don't measure things, because if you can measure it, you can manage it and live by metrics. but I think you have to be in tune to the person side of the business too. And I think to overlook those things that are less quantifiable and more qualitative, I think is could be a big gap that you could miss as a leader,
Yeah.
for sure. If you're just looking at Excels and spreadsheets all day long, you could miss some underlying tones in the business that you really should pick up on sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I mean, employee engagement is strong, and there's a fabulous book that really enlightened me, and I would say corrected me in a way. I mean, look, I came out of the Marine Corps, hard charging sergeant of the Marines, and just
Mm-hmm.
you know, I've talked to other military guys, and you just have this push driven mindset sometimes. But early in my day, I had a lady. I was pushing hard. It was not nothing in the business. Someone associated with someone in the business, and she kind of gave me this like, you're not in the military anymore. And I looked at it twofold. I later learned what she was trying to say. I, I knew we were killing it, and my response to that was, "Well, that's our core differentiator. That's one of our differentiators. That's why we're kicking everyone else's ass." Because
Right, right.
because I've got that in me, and I'm bringing it
Yeah.
to the table, and I'm bringing it to this culture, and we're getting after it. But what she meant was, and I it didn't take me long later to realize, but it was really that I'm not in the military anymore. And I got to remember that the other people around me haven't been through 13 weeks of Marine Corps boot camp and
Yeah.
went
Yeah.
through that and have calloused with that type of,
Oh,
I don't
100%.
know, I'll say lack of empathy maybe.
Yeah.
And I think
Yeah.
I would give it to, I'm seeing enough of it to know that military leaders today are learning much better than this isn't a slight against military at all with their leadership. It's just the way again, I was 22. I didn't know any better, but the truth of employee engagement and having empathy as a leader and being a vulnerable leader and things like that, being a servant leader, but at the same time, in military, our primary leadership objective is mission accomplishment, right? Primary leadership
Well,
objective is
and
mission
yeah,
accomplishment, and then troop
yeah,
welfare was
and
second, right? We called it out, right, in the Marine Corps.
oh yeah,
Primary,
yeah, and
secondary objectives were mission accomplishment, troop welfare. Because if you sacrifice the mission just to take care of the troops, we're all going to die, right? So
we're all gonna die.
primary leadership objective is accomplish the mission.
Well, and I think you touched on it there. Like, that's one of the big things is, like be clear. I mean, we service the military all day. Like, you're talking about life and death consequences.
Yeah,
We're not talking about we lost the bid or we lost the contract or you're talking about the severest of severe consequences if you cannot execute on your portion of the mission. And I think that for the military, that is at times while there is a little bit of a lack of empathy because they don't have the time or the ability to have somebody not be where they need to be.
yeah,
But I think, and look, for me, that's one of the biggest things as like a leader that I've had to grow into and understand, and it's come with age and it's come with time. Um, is that I used to operate at this level, and I would look to the left and the right of me and expect everyone else to operate at that level. And that's just not going to be the case. And I think what happens is it can frustrate leaders.
yeah,
And that frustration can be lashed out at different folks. But the difference, I think, between operating in kind of like that military where it is life or death, and you need to be able to 100% with confidence trust that person on your left and your right. In the business, you've got a little bit of flexibility to say that, like, look, I know that you might not operate at this level, but what I'm going to try and do is make you operate slightly better than you were yesterday, you know? And I want you to be happy with who you are today, but I want you to want to be better tomorrow. And that's the thing is, I think it's a fine line for high operators too, that you can get very self-defeating. And
mhm,
I think sometimes that self-defeat drives you to get better, but it's a fine line of, because I think if you're not comfortable in your skin today, it's very hard to be comfortable with others. You see kind of a little bit of this outrage culture going on. And I think a lot of that is just people aren't happy with who they are.
100%.
And it manifests itself in a myriad of different ways. And for me, so I try to keep that mindset of, I'm happy with the person I am today, spiritually in my faith, with my family, with my job, with my coworkers, with my friends and family, but I'm always trying to be better. And I try not to put myself in that defeatist mindset of wanting to be better because I'm beating myself up today, but I don't ever want to try and rest on my laurels. So it is a fine balance in the way that you treat others and try to motivate them to get into the same mindset of continual growth. It's a delicate balance because everybody's different, and what motivates them is different too.
Yeah.
That's another thing that I've found historically. Some it's title, some it's just friendships and accolades, some it's monetary. And it changes over time. The same 25-year-old that might have started in the business that was worried about changing his title, and he just wanted to be the junior executive, and then the mid, like whatever it was it just title? Now it's more of a monetary because he's starting a family, and so
Yeah.
people's priorities change. And if you're not close to the employees, I think you can kind of miss some of that and how to help best them grow into their best professional that they can be.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of things to kind of round that out. I mean, one of the things I teach on is I teach clients, the Marine Corps traits and principles, right? And in
Mm-hmm.
that,
Yeah.
in the principles is, train your Marines, right, and know yourself
Mm-hmm.
and seek self improvement, right?
Oh yeah.
And those things right there kind of round it out. You got to know your people and you got to know yourself, and you've got to be striving to get better. Yeah, I mean, and that's where, as you age, takes age with me at least, and I think most, and hopefully you hit these points where you start to like check your ego a little bit, start to
Mm-hmm.
admit when you don't know something, right? You start to,
Mm-hmm.
ask more questions instead of just nodding and going, yeah, I knew that. You
Mm-hmm.
go, actually, hey, tell me about that. I didn't know that. Anything about that? I'm
Yeah.
interested to know. And so it's a level of maturity, So, but you mentioned empathy, and that's a great leadership habit. But you, right? You personally, what's a habit that kind of keeps you, you know, what's something that keeps you keeping up with this high performance role that you got going on?
Oh man, I try to help the mic tomorrow. So I
Yeah,
try to do things today to help the mic tomorrow. And it sounds silly a little bit, but it can be the smallest things. I think we as humans have a propensity to you know, backslide and take it easy and to slip. Like, life is hard. Waking up, doing the same thing every day in, day out, and sometimes not seeing the results. Some of the things that I work on too are very long term. So it's not like, hey, I do something today and I'm going to get the gold star for the day. The gold star might not be for a year and a half from now. So trying to stay motivated in that gets tough and is a struggle. And things like jujitsu I've been doing for 17 years now, and that's a grind. That's one of those things that's a very long term play. It's not like you go in, you learn a couple moves, and all of a sudden you're a wizard. So I'm always trying to help myself for who I am tomorrow, whether it's what I put into my body, even down to the simplest things. I'll give you one. Like typically when I get home from a long day, I'm usually getting home probably around 7:30, 7 o'clock. Mostly every night. Our kids go down around 8. So I'll spend a little bit of time with them usually right before they go to bed. Um, but like if I'm changing out of my work clothes from today, I'll put on my workout clothes for tomorrow morning. Right. And it's simple things like that. So when I go to bed, I wake back up like there's no excuse. Like I'm not sitting around in jammies having coffee because you can slip. I know myself well enough to know that if I get into that place of comfort, it will be too easy to kind of slough off the workout in the morning or to not do my standard routine. So I'm always trying to put myself in a position to win tomorrow. And you know yourself better than anybody else. And like I think part of that is being self-aware of who you are. I think culturally we have a large generation coming up that scares me a good bit, that they're not very self-aware of who they are. And I don't know if that's through the social media piece of, that they're too worried about who they're projecting to the world that they'd want to be. And it's they spend so much time and effort projecting who they want to be and less time working on who they should be trying to be.
sure.
Um, and so for myself, like I try to be very self-aware of those shortcomings that I do have, and I try to protect my future self against them.
Yeah.
So, for me, I know I'm a person that operates on patterns. So my pattern every morning is up at 5:30 and I read the Bible from 5:30 to 6. And then I usually work out from 6 to 7:30. And then I'm, 7:30 to 8 a shower. And then I'm in the office by 9 and I work till about 7 and then I'm home. And so like I'm a very patterned individual because I know that's what I need. And even to the point where, and this is a high operator deal, like, you can get too patterned at times. So, I actively break my schedule at times to put times aside to think about things and to strategize, whether that's professionally or personally. So, I'm always trying to plan ahead based on my self awareness of who I am to be better tomorrow,
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
that makes sense.
No, it does. I think having a routine is key. And I think, because you can't, or like, let's talk about just personal growth and improvement for a minute, right?
Mm-hmm.
And with anything, and as I talk about this a lot in business too, which is like, unless you have a system, you can't
Oh,
improve,
yeah.
right? Like, what are you improving? If you're operating
There's
in
no baseline.
chaos,
Yeah.
yeah, if you don't
Yeah.
have a baseline to look at the system and go, okay, I'm falling short here. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
this is what I need to change, right? Unless you have that routine, it's really hard to stick with it, to know where you need to make adjustments and things like that. So like you, I'm very patterned.
Mm-hmm.
And you see this in other high performers. I mean, I think it's Zuckerberg. They talk about Obama. Some names I've heard, like they have this. They wear the same stuff all the time because that's one less
Every
thing
day.
that they want
Yeah.
to think about. They just wear the same clothes,
Yeah.
same. And you and I talked about that this week, Roland. Like I've worn the same work shoes for probably 8 years. Only until recently that they
Right.
stopped making
Right.
them. But
Right.
Kenneth Cole reaction, shameless plug. Whoever makes the
Yeah.
Kenneth Cole.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I wore
Yeah.
those shoes, and every 6 months I get on Amazon, reorder. As soon as I saw the soles running out, reorder. I didn't want
Uh,
to try to figure out, did another pair of shoes work for me. These work for me. Give me another pair.
right.
I mean, I was throwing out dozens of them, and so, and that's the same thing. I'm just very patterned. And what that does is it takes the guesswork out of it, right? I
Mhm.
work with people and
Yeah.
they talk about, I'm super disorganized. Well, show me your schedule. Well,
Right. Right.
they just walk into the day without a game plan. I can't do that anymore. I've learned, and I have a game plan for every single day. I do it. I do it at the end of the week, right? I get my week
Mhm.
plan together for the next week, and then that's my week close routine. I clear the decks, everything had going on this week. It's kind of like back in elementary school, clean up, clean up. Like I do clean up. I go do my schedule, do my
Yeah.
inbox,
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
I am intentional
Yeah.
that I'm going to end my week with all my tasks accounted for, my inbox completely
Mhm.
cleaned up and turned into tasks, and I'm gonna end my day with my inbox clean, my tasks fully reconciled for the week and for the week to come. I'm going to have my next week laid out from start to finish every single day. And the
Mhm.
beauty of having a routine is I actually just need to look at my routine and go, okay, what's going on in my schedule? What adjustments do I need to make? Right. I'm just managing the exceptions for
Yeah.
the week.
Yeah.
Right. But
Exceptions. Yeah.
I'm up at 4. I have coffee with Jody until 5. She goes and works out. I start reading from 5 till 6. And then from
Mhm.
6 to 7, I do my thought development time. And then 7, I start working out for an hour. That's my daily routine. But on
Yeah.
Fridays, I sit down and go, okay, what am I going to be reading this week? In fact, I'll take a
Yeah.
step farther. What chapters or how many pages am I reading each day? So I'm real intentional on that. And so to your point, I'm setting
Mhm.
myself up for success because here's what's happened
Yeah.
when you don't do that. You look back on a week and go, man, I didn't work out this week.
Where'd the time
Well,
go?
you didn't plan to
Yeah.
work out this week. Or you
Right.
planned to work out, but you didn't plan on what you were going to do. Like I go down and go, I'm going to
Yeah.
do upper body on Monday. I'm going to do, cardio on Tuesday. And I lay it out because, like you said, with getting up and already having your clothes on, that the thinking
Yeah.
is done. All I got to do is
It's fun.
execute now. I've already
Yeah.
thought about it. Now I just get to go, and it's so relieving, right?
Yeah.
It's just a great. It's a powerful tip, and I just can't drill that home enough with enough people who say,
Yeah.
"Hey, I can't get this done. I don't have enough time, and I'm so disorganized." Yeah, sit down an hour a week, whatever it takes to plan your week ahead. Start getting ahead of it.
And I think to your point, some of that is the value proposition of it. Like when you think about it, and you're living in a society that is trying to capitalize every second on your wants, right? Not your needs, but your wants, right? Whether it's an Instagram ad, whether it's a Facebook ad, whether it's whatever, they're looking to pull you into a purchase, a transaction, and all of that is time spent. And I think the one thing that I've noticed is like kind of with guys like you and me, like we look at things to say like, I start from the default position, like with your shoes, like what you like, something else is not going to be better. Like I think we live in this continual bigger, better deal, of so okay, so if you get a different type of shoe, how much value is that going to bring, right? Like other than not having to think about it, having free time to develop and do something else. Like we live in this constant state of thinking that everything else other than what we're doing is going to be better. And simple things like that, like whether it's shoes or, we have this propensity to spend massive amounts of time. And, society and marketing is happy to help you do that,
Yeah.
right? They're
Oh, yeah.
happy to help you spend an hour and a half scrolling through Instagram looking at, probably 50% ads, of what you might want. But really, guys like us, we know we need a pair of shoes.
Yeah.
That's fine. The ones that I have, I like. They're sufficient. I take the guesswork out of it, right? There's no need to look at another ad, So, and I think it leaves you open to the other things that are more important, like personal development and things like that. And what people I think fail to notice because it's very sneaky is the time suck, I guess, for lack of a better term, that can steal away from you.
Oh, yeah.
And to your point, you get to the end of the week and you're like, what happened?
Yeah.
You know,
And you feel like you didn't
and
get
where did the
anything
time
done.
go?
If you operate in
Yeah.
chaos all week, you look back and go, man, I didn't get anything done. I was busy, but I wasn't productive, right? I didn't get anything done.
I'll tell you one thing that I've noticed just in the business um, over the years, and I'll say over the last 10 years, and I've kind of seen a slow curve like this that, Fridays used to come, call it 5 years ago. And that was the kind of day that the business breathed and was everybody sat back and went, wow, we got through it, right? And we did some of that. Let's plan for what next week is. Let's look at our schedule. Do I really need to be in that meeting? Is that really the best use of my time? I find now that Fridays sometimes are my busiest days because it's almost like our culture is like they've wasted time throughout the week and oh no, I've got to get all these things done. And it's like this Fridays are now some of the busiest days of my week and I'm like, looking at it at this super macro level, like I can see that some of that is this kind of digital media rapid society kind of sucking people's time throughout the week and then they get to the end of the week and they're like, oh no, wait a minute, I got a job to do. um, and look, I say that because I fall victim to it too. I'm not sitting on a pedestal saying, look at everybody else. I know it because I fall victim to spending time in places that aren't the most valuable use of my time. So I know this as a, as a contributor to the for Friday, Cas Rep Friday. But so and it's one thing that it's at a macro level I've seen happen over the course of time, and I think it's because time people let their time be stolen. Somebody a long time, and I constantly tell my wife this. I'm like, look, if you don't manage your time, somebody will manage it for you,
Yep.
and their priorities and the value of your time will not be the same or aligned. I can guarantee as what yours are. So you better be diligent about how you manage your time and what you spend it on.
It's how you get to protect your time is actually having it defined how you're going to spend your time. And now you actually are empowered to protect it right now. When someone
Yeah.
comes to you and goes, hey, we got to sit down and do this. Actually, let me look, that's not going to work for me. But I tell you what, 3:00 on Thursday, can we do it then? Yeah,
Yeah.
again, if you've gotten your game plan, your week squared away, and look, you got to leave yourself some what I call buffer time. You got to
Yeah. Of
have some
course.
time to pick your head up and you manage the exceptions or have, what I used to do is for sure I would have like a half an hour buffer time, mid morning, mid
Mhm.
afternoon, things that I just had nothing assigned. So that I could go ahead and what ultimately would happen is I would have 3 to 4 times a day that I had email buffer time, and that's the time I would check my inbox. I wouldn't look at my inbox until that time, because in your inbox is just everyone else trying to grab your attention. There are all these other
Yeah.
things, and
Yeah.
it's a
Yeah.
distraction.
Yeah.
So I would
Hmm.
actually say I'm not checking email. I would check it obviously to start the day. I just thumb through. Is there anything that's what I look for is things that are dependent on me, right? Or
Yeah.
I'm dependent on
Oh
to
yeah.
make my next move or expecting. So I want to make
Mhm.
sure that no one's waiting on a response or something from me. So I'll look through that. But other than that, I'm going heads down. 11:30
Yeah.
before lunch and pick my head back up. All right, same thing. Is there anything that I was waiting on that came through, or that people are waiting on me? Boom, and that was it. Before I think you hit on a good part. The time suck of social media. People do not know, and I think if they get in and they look at their little time tracker on how much time everyone's iPhone does it. I'm
Yeah.
sure the other ones do. If you go in and look,
Yeah.
it'll tell you how much time you're spending on social media, and that's just a good baseline to set some goals around and go, man, I spend 14 hours a week on social media.
Oh yeah.
Holy smoke! I mean,
Yeah.
that's a day and a half workday. You know.
Yeah.
But it's a slow leak of your time, right? Like it's
Yeah.
we're all limited. We don't even know how much time we have on this earth, right? So
Yeah. Oh,
social
100%.
media consumption, right? Consumption is a slow leak of this time that you don't even know how much you have, So it's
Oh yeah.
something that, for coming out of tech, I kind of have preached to people for a long time, especially when it got to where it is today, which is tech is a tool. It's not a toy,
Yeah.
So you sit around and play with toys all day, because that's when you sit there and consume social. That's what you're doing. You're just sitting there playing with a Tonka truck when you could be getting shit done, and
Yeah.
you're not,
Yeah.
So it's tech is a tool, and because I don't like going to the extreme and saying man, just turn it all off. It's not like use it for the power that it is, right? I mean, we
Yeah.
have access to
Mhm.
so much information. I've learned so much more because of technology. I've communicated with people and experts that I never probably could have
Oh yeah.
without this technology. So it's got its benefits, but you got to be using it in the right way. And you can
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
easily use it in a wrong way, but you can just as easily use it in the right way too. So that's where discipline kind of
Yeah.
comes in,
Oh
and
yeah, absolutely. The
you know,
connectivity availability of everybody nowadays is immense. Whether it's through social platforms like LinkedIn, things like that, it is like it is such a powerful mechanism to get access to folks that you may not have had access to, customers you may not have had access to, information you may not have had access to. But you're right. The downside of that is playing with it like it's a Tonka truck. That's a
yeah.
great analogy.
Um,
Look, recognize what you're doing, and if it's not adding value to you, I think you and I have talked about this. Then you are the product at that point.
oh yeah, yeah.
I mean, you are the product at that
If
point.
you're not paying, if you're not paying for a product, you are the product. I think is
100%.
that documentary on Netflix kind of talked
Oh
about that.
yeah, for
All
sure.
right, so let's get into the fun stuff finally. Jiu-jitsu. So you've been doing it 17 years. I know you're a powerhouse brown belt. Yeah. How'd you get into it? How'd you get into jiu-jitsu, by the way?
Man, I tell you, by fluke. I wish I had some grandiose story, but I was hanging out with a neighbor, and I don't know if it was what UFC we were watching at the time, and I was like, we could do that, too foolish,
We could do that.
whatever I was, 20 some year old. I'm like, we could do that. And I was like, I think I saw a place down the street. And shout out to John Garfield of Garfield Jiu Jitsu. I strolled in there like I knew something. And, you talk about ego and pride. I don't know. I probably had something like best physique in high school or something. And boy, about 2 minutes on the mat and all pride. And, I was humbled extremely quickly, as most people are that go through any type of jujitsu training. So, I started with a buddy of mine and, we started in Annapolis and man, just caught the fever. Um, and it's one of those sports where its attrition rate is high. Most people make it to blue. And, it is a tough, challenging sport. And, jujitsu culture now, one of the big things that you'll hear is, there's a lot of fear in the kind of jujitsu world for some of the purists and kind of the old school folks that it's losing some of that old grind part of it and
Hmm.
becoming more of kind of the puppy mill type. You've been here 6 months, you get a belt. I was never given a belt on any schedule or timeline. It was always assessed by my abilities to execute kind of what I had learned. And also, once you get kind of past blue, to be able to turn around and convey that knowledge to somebody else, whether it was my instructor, John Garfield, or Phil Whitlock. Um, and, both of those guys trained under Miguel da Silva, Pedro Sauer. I think John currently is under Hickson, under Henry Aikens right now. But, all those guys would really put a high emphasis too on your ability to train the next person as well as you learned it, if not better.
Right.
Because, just as well as I do, I could show you something. Your body's going to apply it differently. You're going to find different tips, tricks, positions that are a little bit more helpful to you than somebody else, and your ability to convey that of like, hey, this is normally how I do it, but I'm pretty tall, so when I do it, I go here or I go there because the leverage is a little bit better. So they always had a high focus on our ability to kind of take that knowledge and to continue it on to the next generation. So because it is one of these skill sets where somebody that is more better trained than somebody that's here but is less has less physical attributes. Hey, call it a 120 pounder that's a purple belt. Every day of the week is probably going to beat a 180 pounder that's a white belt.
Oh
Right,
yeah.
their skill level is just so much so much higher. And they've got so much more tricks and tactics, and they've been through the fire. That's another thing about jujitsu is, it's one of the only sports that you can really, I would say, execute and train at a very high combat tempo and not take severe damage. I mean,
Hmm.
I've done some boxing in the past, and nowhere to the point that I would say I'm extremely skilled, but I would say kind of JV level boxer. And look, sparring and boxing, you take damage. That's the first thing the boxing instructor tell you is you're gonna get hit. Punching bags don't hit back, but people do, and you're going to take some damage. But jiu-jitsu is one of those sports that you can really operate at a high tempo. Um, and look, don't get me wrong, it is brutal, and you are going to have soreness and aches and twists and potentially breaks that will come through the years. But there's not too many sports that you can aggressively pursue that kind of training and get away that unscathed. So it's very valuable from that perspective.
Yeah, and so you've got this opportunity to really test yourself. But and what have you taken from the mats that have helped you in your daily, right? Because here, right, we started this talking about you're a high performer in this what will be a $1 billion business, on a leadership team. And oh, by the way, now we get here and it's like, oh, by the way, I I, I can kick your ass so far across the street you wouldn't know what hit you.
Yeah.
Right. So,
Yeah.
but how does that help you, right? Like why
Oh yeah.
jujitsu how does it help you in your personal and
I'll
professional
say,
performance?
yeah. I mean, look, the benefits of jujitsu, are immense, and I think to sit here and try to count them out, I don't know if I would do it justice, honestly. But I'll give you two. And the one of the biggest ones I think is humility, humility and loss, and your ability to know that the world's not ending and that there's a chance for you to get better. I think with the societies that stands today, everybody assumes or expects to get the win. And I don't know if it's what we're watching on TV and what we're reading, your best self now, whatever it is. There's also like this Pollyanna thought that like every attempt is going to be a win. And that's purely not the case. You ask any, kind of high performer, and they'll tell you about their losses.
Yeah.
Look, I can't tell you how many contracts I've won. I can tell you how many I've lost. And I can tell you how impactful it was and what I did to get better after I lost them. And jujitsu is the same way. You know, you kind of walk in with this, oh, I'm going to be pretty good at this. And you are quickly, you know, demoralized in some aspects. And I think there is something about, you know, a one on one competition between, you know, people that are on, you know, roughly around the same level where you have to say, I give up,
Yep.
I concede. You know, if you
And
play team
because in real
sports,
life, you just killed me, right? Like,
yeah,
you know,
yeah,
like
yeah,
that's what the
yeah,
tap is, right? You're simulating,
yeah,
hey, you just
yeah.
killed me, you know.
You just
Um,
killed me. Yeah, yeah,
Thanks.
yeah,
Let's start
yeah.
over.
Trust me, I've sat up some long nights walking through the psychology of that, and
Right.
yeah, it's absolutely true. It's one of the most, I think, hardest things to do, and I can only speak from a male perspective. And I've definitely rolled and had with a bunch of different females. But it's the same thing. Like you've got this kind of bravado, and to be able to have to go, I give up, and to what would have been if it was a real world scenario, some of the most significant consequences. That'll mess with you a little bit, and you know I think in a good way. You know because I think you know with the way we are in culture and society now, like you know there's just this we have the ability, especially in team sports. You know I love team sports. I think team sports are great. My kids are on team sports. They play a lot of team sports. Um, but the one thing I think you can is you can kind of shift blame. Like you have this ability in your consciousness, and whether you do it subconsciously or not, you know, well, if Timmy would have passed me the ball or Janie would have just, you know, gone here and she would have capitalized on that goal, we would have won today. You know, there's a way to rationalize it. When you've got to kind of look yourself in the mirror and be like, no, I had to give up. You know, that's on you, right? And that's a humbling experience, let alone if you've got to do it 5, 6, 7 times in an hour in a class. You know, that takes any sense of pride that you have and kind of throws it to the window and out the window. And I've never seen any benefit in pride. I really haven't. I mean, I'm sure people have written books on it and why you've got to have, you know, some pride. And you know, I'm not saying that you don't value yourself and have good self worth, but from a pride perspective and letting that head get big, I've never seen any value to it. I don't think it allows you to continuously grow because I think it puts you in a sedentary mindset that you're there. And I think what jujitsu constantly does is totally tears that self down because there's always somebody better. And sometimes that somebody better might be somebody below you coming up.
Right. Yeah.
And that's a humbling experience that can drive you to get better too. So, you know, that's one of the main things that I think it's given me is just a heart of humbleness and just the mindset to always try and get better.
Well, it's
You
like
know, I think the second,
it's that
yeah,
ego, right? So I think you know
oh man,
you can be
yeah,
proud of who you are and what you're going on when it's that ego, right? And
uh-huh.
you know, I think the humility's huge, and I would venture to guess it would be my opinion that that's why the attrition rate's so high, right? Because
Yeah,
here we
yeah,
are,
yeah,
we just want to post our glamour shots all day and make everyone, you know, it just
yeah,
and oh,
yeah,
you're so great and that's so awesome and but you know, and there we go, you know, and that's a and that's a good challenge to have, and it's a great tipping
yeah.
point to grow, right? Like you know, like just jujitsu or other hard things, right? You're going and putting
Yes.
yourself in a very challenging situation. And if you can admit defeat, right? Like, because even
Yeah.
like when you tap, you're really saying, "Hey, you beat me," right?
Yeah.
And but I'm not giving
Yeah.
up.
You won.
Okay. You beat me that time. Now let's go again.
Go again.
See if you can get that again, right? And
Right.
I always joke when Ben was down that day and you're like, he's a Kimura master. And I'm like, okay. And we start rolling. And I was like, well, let's see how many Kimuras you get on me in this roll. It was like a 5-minute roll. He like slapped a Kimura on me. Like, and I'm whole time. I was like, you're not going to get that again. I think he put me in a Kimura like 26 times in 5 minutes. I'm like, you know, like you're not doing that again. Boom, got me. But you know, it's, but the moral of the story is like, you know, you're learning, like when you get tapped, you go, okay, I know what I did wrong, or I'm not letting that
Yeah.
happen again. And so it's building this fight or flight, right? And maybe fight or flight's not it, but it is back to the attrition. Like some people can't handle that, right? They're getting their
Yeah.
ego checked and they're going, I don't want to go through that anymore. I'm out. Right.
Yeah.
Where the right thing to do is to go, that's what happened to me. I got called into jujitsu. I had a family member who wanted to do it, was graduating high school, and I was actually finishing a degree at the time. And I was like, "Listen, you finish high school." They wanted to go be a MMA fighter. I said, "Okay, you finish high school. I'm going to finish up this degree that summer. I'll find a gym. Well, I'll go with you." It was kind of like I want to do this, but he didn't want to do it by himself. I'll go with you. I'll go with you. So we found this MMA place over in Delaware. And first night, the instructor's son, 15 years old. I'm 31. I'm a 31-year-old former Marine, and this 15-year-old kid beat my ass. I mean, he beat my ass. And I left that night. I was like, oh, hell no. Like this isn't, I'm not going to walk around knowing like there's a 15-year-old out there that can beat my ass. That's not going
Yeah.
to happen. But
Yeah.
that's that humility, right?
Oh
And my
yeah.
family member eventually quit. I think after a few weeks, they were like a young 18-year-old, just like,
Yeah.
I'm out,
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
out. But I'm like, no, I'm leaving the gym. I'm going straight to Commitment Fitness, like at 10 o'clock at night, running 4 miles and then getting up and doing it again because I need my
Yeah.
cardio up. I was gassed.
Yeah.
I need my cardio up. I was ready to throw up. I need to work on that. And okay, how did you do that to me? And like my brain was like, no, I'm
Oh
in,
yeah.
I'm in now. Like, because it's just, and that's that humility aspect. I could have, that's what a lot of people do. They get in there and go, I can't have this, I can't,
Well,
have these
yeah.
type.
You talked about it earlier about baselines, and about getting a true baseline. And I think that's one thing it does pretty quickly.
Yeah.
I think, look, you can go into an organization or a business and you can get into the mix of things and be like, oh, wow, what I thought was my operating baseline, that they're operating at a much higher level. I think jujitsu does that like in an
Yeah.
instant,
Oh yeah. Tells you where you're at.
and
Yeah.
who you think you are in your mind becomes very clear physically immediately. And, I think some people like yourself will rise to that challenge. Like me, I'll rise to that challenge. But others, it's heartbreaking because if you built that person, if you built that image, that, kind of golden calf, if you will, as much as you, and then in an instant, it is just taken away. If you don't have that humble spirit, that's a hard thing to deal with. That is
Yeah.
a really, really hard thing to deal with as a person. 100%.
Yeah,
One
and
hundred
and
percent.
and it's be the person that just says, okay, I got something to learn here.
Yeah.
I got to solve for this, right? I got to,
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm obviously not who I thought I was, right? I'm not Mr.
Right. Right.
Badass, I've never been
Yeah.
in a fight before, and now,
Yeah.
I just came to this place, and I'm not that guy. So, hey, if I
Yeah.
want to be that guy, I got to stay. I got to stay here on these mats. I got to train. I got to get it squared away, right? So that's the, don't walk away from it. Like stick with it. It'll come, right? Like that saying, that's one of
Mhm.
my favorite sayings. Actually, is like, all a black belt is a white belt that never quit, right? Like,
Yeah.
man,
Yeah.
take that to the bank in all things. Just
Yeah.
a black belt is just a white belt that never quit. Period. Right?
Yeah.
Just hang in there. Just keep learning. It's not going
It
to.
is.
That's one
It
thing
is.
that's not going to happen overnight. It's not instant satisfaction. In fact, it's the opposite. Right? When you get
Oh,
started, it's instant dissatisfaction, and that dissatisfaction should be not with what happened, but with where you are. Right? And say, how do I
yeah.
get there?
Well, it's a great segue. My second point that I was going to say, that really the lesson that it taught me was how to play the long game. Um, and I'm sure I started jujitsu with this vision and grandeur of getting some black belt and yada, 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 yada. It's no longer, like we were talking about how, kind of your motivators and your priorities have changed. I am in this thing where I'm just totally taken by the continuous learning of it, and the continuous evolution and evolving of it. And I could think, less about my belt and everything else that goes along with it, other than just that continuous improvement portion of it. There's never a day that I'm going to walk in and step on the mat and be like, I got it.
Yeah.
I got it all figured out. And I would say even the highest level black belts, they're constantly learning. And as they're, that's another thing too that I think is jujitsu is good is as you begin to teach, everybody knows this, that anybody that's ever taught anything, you pour so much into the research, into the education of yourself to prepare the lesson that you can't even quantify the benefits to yourself in that process. That's one of the things that I always loved about jujitsu, especially the guys that I came up under too, was their propensity to want you to be able to teach others. It built this kind of gene in you that as you researched and because you want to make sure what you were conveying was correct, because there is this very kind of stoic kind of legacy to jujitsu and kind of the kind of credo of it. So, you kind of have a reverence for it. So, that research to do it right and to teach it correctly and for it to be conveyed properly, you didn't even notice that while you were doing that, you're growing yourself the whole time too. And I kind of love that about the sport. But to your point, like the long game of it, like you don't go in and learn a Kimura and then all of a sudden you're just tapping everybody left and right. No, they all know the Kimura. They know the Kimura defense.
Yeah.
It's like this long-term, long game play. And I think I went like a year and a half to two before I even tapped anyway. Matter of fact, I can't remember any really of the submissions that I've done over the last 17 years. I can remember my first tap though. And it kind of goes to show you that, like, it is this long-term, long play. And I think our society doesn't have the intestinal fortitude sometimes today to play that long game. And, for me in my job, especially as like chief strategy officer at a defense business, I'm looking at other countries around the world, be it China, be it Russia, and like how they're establishing and what we're doing to, prop up our defenses as a country. And you look at China and that authoritarian, they play the long game. They play it real well. Now, look, their society is set up with an authoritarian government to do so. Right. We've got a 4-year election cycle, and for good reason. I think bureaucracy, there's something to be said to that, right? That allows that a smaller people group doesn't get overrun by a larger people group just by default. So I see the benefits in our government. Don't get me wrong. But they do have an innate ability and the timeline to play that long game. And that's one thing jujitsu has taught me is, like I was telling you, a lot of the efforts I work on here today, I'm not getting the gold star today. I can only pray that we get the gold star a year and a half, 2 years from now. And even when we get it, that's not my gold star. That's everybody else's gold star. Because, just as every leader, the win is everybody else's. The loss is yours, and that's the way it is. And if you can't stomach that, then that's not the role for you,
Yeah, definitely.
So that's a big lesson that is
So if
taught.
you had to explain, what makes you successful to someone you're mentoring, what would that one thing be?
God's grace, man. We haven't talked about it a lot, but faith. I am grounded in faith. I'm a Christian guy. I said I get up every morning. Not to, no pun intended, religiously, and read the Bible. And one of the things that I've tried to let that accomplish is I've allowed it to permeate throughout my life. One of the biggest defaults I'll say, or one of the biggest faults I'll say of kind of the Christian culture nowadays is it's kind of church on Sunday, AWOL on Monday. And if you would have gone back into biblical days, I think the Hebrew language has like 1/4 nouns of what the English language actually has. So if you went up to like Jesus and said, "What's your spiritual walk like?" He would have looked at you like, "What are you talking about?" Like that spirituality permeated every aspect of life. And so for me, that 30 minutes in the morning is a way for me to ground myself, is to look at something bigger than myself, my salvation, the way that I look at it, and to me, it puts me in a state of humility. It puts me in a state of gratitude. And really from that perspective, kind of knowing and walking with Jesus, it allows me to never feel alone. And what I try to do is those lessons that he teaches me through that, ancient book and scriptures, I allow it to permeate my life. And, I know that there's, some large cultural shifts of not to kind of step on other people's toes. And like, look, that was never, I think, ever the intent of Jesus. He kind of only gives you one really narrative, and that's go forth and make disciples. and teach kind of the lessons that Jesus has taught and put your faith in him. So from my perspective, when I'm talking to people, that empathy that I've grown has been largely attributed to like reading the Bible and kind of understanding things like that, treating my neighbor as myself. And so from that perspective, the lessons that you see in the Bible and that I take from it, I don't allow just to sit in the pew on Sunday, and to pat my son on the back of his head as we're walking out of church. I allow it to, kind of emulate out of me in some form or manner as the people that I talk to on a day-to-day basis. And like I said, whether that's praying to somebody, like, you don't understand, I think, and I maybe will never know the impact of telling somebody whose, mother-in-law is going, through cancer treatments and she's having to leave work at, 4:30 every night and run there to support her, that, hey, I'll pray for you. And if anything that you need, you let me know. But when you say that, you do it. You do pray. And if they do ask, you do it. And so I think for me, one of the biggest key factors to me is and it also, Christianity, when you look at, there's a verse in James that says all good things come from above, speaking about God. When I look at these factors of how, the business has grown and I've professionally grown, like, it's not me. Any other person could have been in my same situation, right? Like, I am blessed that I've been in the specific situations, touched by the people that have spoken to my life, and I've grown. Like, that's not of my doing. A lot of times I think we have the ability to be like, oh, I did that. I did that. And of course, you have to put in the sweat equity. There's things like the jujitsus of the world that you have to put in the sweat equity. You have to get up and you have to do it. But there are so many things that are outside of your control as a human being that have helped your growth and kind of evolution of a person, that you would be silly to think that you've done it all by yourself. And for me, when I step back and look at my life and look at the way things have transpired, I know without a doubt, 100% how, that God being in my life has changed that. So, I kind of, that's one of those main things that I just try to let my spirituality, I try not to cut it off as I leave the door of my house. I try to just let it permeate through my life. And I'm not jamming the Bible down people's throats, but if you ask a question, I'm going to be prepared to answer it. And that's one of the things the Bible says, is be prepared in season and out of season. That's one of the things that I always like too, talking about, transition in a biblical concept to a business concept. I think it's Peter that says, be prepared in season and out of season. And what Peter's talking about is giving you testimony. But if you equate that to business, right? Business opportunities only come around every so often, that chance to get the position, to win the contract, to make the sale. You constantly have to be prepared in season and out of season, because if you're not, that opportunity will pass you by and somebody else will make it. Because they were prepared outside of season. So I think, there's a lot of things with my, my spiritual walk with the Lord that have just made me a better human, a better person, a better businessman, a more empathetic leader, so a better husband, a better father. So, from that perspective, I'd say that's one of the key things that has helped to my success. And then I would say to constantly put myself in a position of continual learning, to be inquisitive. Never think I've got it figured out. I can't remember some business leader or something said, it's the things that you think that will stop you from being successful. So I never think that I have it all figured out. And I think you said it earlier, like, you almost try to revert to that childlike behavior of asking questions and why do you do it that way, and exploring it, because you're only seeing the world from one angle. You're not seeing it how this person looks at it, and to not kind of be inquisitive like that, you're missing a bunch of different ways to kind of look prospectively at the situation going on.
Yeah, awesome. Powerful stuff, man. Well, we're up on time here. I think you've got something to run to, but if
Yeah,
interested, how can folks get connected with you?
So, from a business perspective, you can shoot me an email, Mike, Mike.Russell, Russell, at federalresources.com, all one word. And I would say go back to you, and
Go through.
you can be my better.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah. Oh,
from a
you
business.
just gave every spammer in the world your freaking email
I know.
address.
I'm
Way to
done.
go.
I'm done for. I'm done for. You might have to cut that one out.
Yeah, we got to
Yeah,
change your
I'm
address.
not. I'm not a big. I'm
You
not a
want to
big
give your
Twitter
cell phone
guy.
number too? While you're at it, I'll just
No, no,
throw
no.
your
Yeah,
email
yeah.
and cell in the show notes.
Area code and social security. Yeah, I'm not a big Twitter guy, and I'm not a big social media
You're on
guy. So
LinkedIn though, right? Yeah, but LinkedIn probably,
I
if
am.
you're
I am on
online, probably.
LinkedIn. Yeah, you can look me up on LinkedIn, just my company name and me, and I'm happy. I'm always making connections, so for sure.
Awesome, man. Well, hey, it was everything I'd hoped would be, man. I appreciate you coming on. We got definitely other topics, so we'll find another opportunity, maybe get you back on again and hit
Absolutely.
those things as well.
I'd love to do it, man.
All
Love to
right,
do it,
man.
brother.
Thanks for coming
All
on.
right. Talk to you later.